Hello, my name's Cliff Stevenson and I'm the Helpful Economist. The Hollywood strikes for actors and writers are based around a long list of disputes. However, we can focus on a couple of the issues that have interesting economic questions, and I'll propose some possible solutions that might resolve the disputes. The issues are: first, adapting the payment model for actors and writers to take into account streaming, so-called residual payments. And second, issues in relation to the use of AI to adapt existing performances and scripts into new content. So let's start with residuals, and we'll use an example with actors, but the same principle applies to writers also. The current typical payment model for, say, a TV series is that the actor will receive an initial payment which covers the first broadcast of the show. If the production is rebroadcast, additional payments would then become due, so-called residuals. Before we look at where there's an issue in relation to residuals with streaming, it's worth just pausing and making some observations about the economics of this process. First, this is a difficult industry for the studios. There is no guarantee that a show will be a success, and many shows are loss-making. Of course, where a show is a hit, this can be extremely profitable. Second, generally actors are not well paid. Most actors struggle to make a sufficient income to live. This is significant because the residuals are critical to actors' pay. Third, the residual can be distinguished from a royalty. A royalty is paid when there's intellectual property rights involved. In this case, the actor retains no rights over the show. The residual works more like a bonus if the show is successful. A final point is that a rebroadcast typically has been a discrete event, and thus the point at which residuals are triggered is very clear. The problem with streaming is that the first broadcast is on the streaming platform. There is no rebroadcast as such because the series just sits there on the streaming platform, so no residual is triggered. However, the show may be very successful and watched many times. It may make the studio a lot of money through new subscribers, but the actor doesn't receive anything extra. The root of the problem here is that there's insufficient transparency on the success of a show when it's on a streaming platform. The streaming companies don't yet provide viewing figures on a per-show basis. So a simple solution to this would be for the streaming platforms to provide figures on how many views each production gets. These figures could be used as a basis to trigger further payments when a show is popular. It's a simple solution, but so far the streaming companies haven't been willing to provide this information. As I said earlier, streaming's a challenging time for everyone, and the main studios are still figuring out how to make the subscription model profitable. So this doesn't really have an easy answer. The record industry has already been through this. There's a simple system now where musical artists are paid according to how many downloads they have. However, the truth is that most artists are not making a living from their music, even artists that have record deals. A small number of artists do very well, whereas the vast majority don't make a living, a little bit like acting. So this is probably going to be the case for actors, even with a new residual system. However, paying no residuals is clearly not right either when a show is a success. Perhaps there is a compromise on some kind of transparency so that residuals can be triggered when a show does well. In relation to the other issue on artificial intelligence, again we can start by looking at issues from the actor's perspective. The AI issues in relation to writers are slightly different, and I'll come back to that later. The Actors Union has described the attitude of the studios as follows. We want to be able to scan a background performer's image, pay them for half a day's labour, and then use an individual's likeness for any purpose forever without their consent. We also want to be able to make changes to principal performers' dialogue and even create new scenes without informed consent. And we want to be able to use someone's images, likenesses and performances to train new generative AI systems without consent or compensation. Now, I'm pretty sure that the studios wouldn't describe their intentions in this way, but this does give a useful indication of the issues that are at stake here. Unlike for residuals, I think that this is an issue of intellectual property. I'm not sure where the law stands on this, but an actor's image is surely like a brand or a trademark. And from an economic perspective, protection of intellectual property rights is really important. At one level, this is kind of a no-brainer. There will be no acting industry if the studios get enough scans of real actors and can then just freely use them in the future. I think there will be a solution to this in terms of being clear of the terms under which a scan can be used by artificial intelligence. It wouldn't be unreasonable, for example, for the studio to have the right to make minor editing adjustments using AI. But in terms of adding additional scenes or future productions, it only makes sense that agreement would have to be reached with the actor concerned and appropriate royalties paid if an image is going to be used by AI. For writers, the Writers' Union has proposed the following: AI can't write or rewrite literary material, and literary material can't be used as a source material and can't be used to train AI. Now, I think this is probably more tricky than the case of actors' images. The issues are more complex, and the truth is none of us really know yet the role that AI will play in our futures. However, perhaps we can identify a principle that AI is not different than a person in this context. Copyright law would prevent any use of a text outside of those covered by the agreement between the studio and the rights holder. Precisely how this works would depend on who actually owns the rights. If a studio pays a writer for the script, but the studio owns the IP, in principle it could use another writer to rewrite or develop it. If this is the case, then why shouldn't the same principle apply to AI? Of course, as in many professions, AI may mean that jobs are lost, but there's only so much we can do to resist this. That said, I do think it's really important that AI isn't used to cheat writers out of any rights or income. This is really not a straightforward issue. Currently, it seems that little progress has been made in terms of an agreement on both of these issues, residuals and artificial intelligence. There are solutions and hopefully compromise can be reached. Although the strike is painful for everybody, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do because there are many complexities here, and the economic costs of the strike does focus everybody's minds on the issues. Thanks for watching. See you next time.